He had no job, no friends, and a face scary enough to get rejected at every interview. But when Suguru downloaded a shady app called Dungeon Go, the real world flipped, because death in the dungeon meant death in real life. Yet on his very first dive, he unlocked a cheat that shouldn't exist. Now this lonely nobody is clearing secret dungeons and stacking millions, becoming a ghost story legend. From jobless loser to underground millionaire, what else is hiding in the depths he just opened? Let's find out. He failed his entrance exams. The company he worked for went bankrupt, and because of his ugly face, he has no friends. This is the story of an unemployed and talentless guy, Owana Sagaru, who makes a ton of money by dungeon diving using a mysterious app called Dungeon Go. His job, while the company he worked for, went bankrupt. He received a message wishing him the best in his future endeavors. MC was upset and thought, oh no, not this. This is the 50th empty letter he's received. Owana Sagaru is 25 years old. MC thought he immediately started looking for a job, and he gets through the application process without any problems. But when it comes to interviews, he can't even pass the first interview. MC thought he knew it. It's his face? He has an awful face. Suguru sat there, holding a straw. An information window appeared. 0 convictions, 0 crimes, 0 bad deeds. MC thought again, this face always frightened others. And even his father, a real Yankee, gave him a strange nickname, the Immortal Dragon. After his father impregnated his mother, he died in some kind of fight. The sound of impact was heard. Suguru continued, the boss must be going through hard times again. He thought he had changed after the business failure. The business he was involved in declined, leading to the company's bankruptcy. All the other bosses had fled, and the loan sharks came to him. There was no hope for the police. They investigated for a long time, but they were never able to catch a single criminal. And the boss, he decided to divorce his wife and start working on a tuna fishing boat starting tomorrow to pay off his debts alone. She bowed and said that at least while he was at work, he should keep an eye on him. MC said he'd cared for him like his own son, and it couldn't be helped. He couldn't abandon him. He'd have to find a job. Suguru pulled out his phone and said, surprised, right now the reward for clearing a dungeon for the first time is 10,000 yen. A reward for clearing the first dungeon? Why not? MC thought they were paying him just to play the game. Was this the same play to earn that was so popular right now? Suguru pressed the play button. He thought it was a location-based game. An information window appeared with a task. He needed to find the dungeon on foot. MC continued to think. These games are pretty hard to play. Maybe he should be able to move around and relieve stress alone? If so, he was disappointed. Well, after all, this is what he was getting paid for. If he didn't find it interesting, he'd delete it. He couldn't enter any of the dungeons here. The nearest F-rank dungeon was quite far away. He couldn't leave the boss's office. The character in the game noticed something, and an information window appeared stating that he had arrived. Sagaru said, rank 1? A very low-ranking dungeon, a tutorial or something. He'd try entering. He pressed the button that said enter. Then he found himself inside the game. MC said in surprise, what the hell? Where is he? He turned around and noticed something. It was a monster. Sagaru was very surprised by this, and the next moment the monster attacked MC. Sagaru screamed in surprise and said that it was huge. He hit it with his bag. The monster flew away from him. MC asked, what the hell? Was there something in that bag? The monster lay on the floor, and then simply vanished. Suguru was perplexed. An information window appeared congratulating him on clearing the dungeon on his first try. A banknote appeared out of nowhere. MC asked what the hell was going on. He took out his phone. He thought he didn't understand anything, that he'd been transported somewhere. He said there was a lot of stuff in the help section. He didn't know apps were so advanced in his day. He thought this dungeon was a conglomeration of negative human emotions. Strong negative emotions can stay in one place and harden like stone, and this app embodies them in the form of monsters and dungeons. The energy called mana that generates human emotions originally circulated in the veins of dragons, but it can also be used to create monsters and dungeons. When he conquers dungeons with this app, negative human emotions are purified. Suguru said, and this money is a reward for this purification. So they mean to say that right now he relieved someone of stress? MC exhaled, holding the banknote in his hands. He said, I guess that's how it works. The monster he just killed, he was lucky the bag was heavy enough to knock him down. But they were gifts from 2 senpais. Taita said that since language, reading, and writing are so important, she'd give him a Japanese dictionary. Takeda's clever. Nakamura said his body is his capital. He shouldn't neglect muscle training. He'd give him dumbbells, Nakamura's muscles. Suguru frustratedly denied it and said he wondered if he could go back. This couldn't be a trap, could it? Thank goodness. It looked like he could go back if he kept going. Apparently, the plot in this world was advanced by this mysterious window. An information window appeared congratulating him on clearing the first dungeon, and a next button appeared at the bottom. He said this, but he, on the contrary, couldn't part with this mysterious window. Maybe he should press it. MC pressed the button. An information window has appeared. Invincible, a stat linked to attack power that prevents him from feeling pain even if he takes damage while conquering a dungeon as an unemployed individual with no quest. Hero, if he solos a dungeon full of higher ranked monsters, he will activate this stat with high frequency. Sagaru said he has a ton of stuff and he thinks fulfilling certain conditions will earn him a title. Multiple information windows have appeared. He needs to defeat the Vengeful Sky Demon and gain experience points. Error. No quest assigned. He has received the titles of Beginner's Luck, Invincible, One-Hit Kill, Hero, Imperial Majesty, Merciless, and Demon Lord. He has received the unique title of Fastest Dungeon Conqueror, a bonus for the unique title, and can now set a second quest for him. Beginner's Luck. When dealing critical damage in the first battle, the critical strike speed increases, and the luck stat is increased. Boss Monster. Obtained by defeating a boss monster without fighting other monsters. Achieving the ninja profession requires knowing the location of the boss monster when entering a dungeon. Invincible is a stat related to attack power, meaning the hero will not suffer damage even if they take damage while conquering a dungeon as an unemployed person without a quest. Hero. If they solo a dungeon full of higher-ranked monsters, they will activate this stat with a high frequency, preventing them from dying from fatal damage. Constriction activates with a high frequency, and attack-related stats are increased. One-hit kill. Killing a boss monster with a single normal attack gives them a high probability of defeating the enemy. Merciless. Acquired by conquering a dungeon. When he first defeats all the monsters in the dungeon, his wide area attack power increases. Upon entering the dungeon, he receives information on the locations of monsters below his level. Demon Lord. If he defeats all the monsters in a dungeon, dealing more than 2 hit points of damage in his first single attack, his magic attack power increases, and his magic defense increases. Fastest Dungeon Master. He can simultaneously receive 2 unique title quests, experience gained increases, and movement speed doubles. MC said there are many effects, and at first glance, these unique skills look the best. With them, you can complete 2 quests at once. So essentially, one person can do the work of 2. He looked at the information window. Merciless. Fastest Dungeon Master. He said all the other titles seem to depend on luck. Maybe this will make it easier for him to clear the rest of the dungeons? Suguru smiled and asked if he should use this app to dive into a dungeon for a while. He was free tomorrow anyway. Maybe he could make a lot more money if it was a high-level dungeon. Suddenly he remembered something and shouted, "Damn, he forgot about the boss." He was asked to keep an eye on him so he wouldn't do anything. MC pressed the exit button. He thought his wife asked him to keep an eye on him. Suguru ran and thought he needed to go to the office. He stood in front of the door and said, so quietly, maybe he went home, or maybe. He knocked and asked the boss, is he here? The boss came out and greeted him happily. They should get out of here. MC was confused. He asked him, is it really him? The boss asked, who else did he want to see? Suguru said, well, the boss apologized again for making him worry. He doesn't know what's wrong, but his anger has completely evaporated. MC asked again, anger? Suguru thought, when he conquers a dungeon with this app, negative human emotions are purified. MC took out his phone and asked, is this a joke or something? He wondered if that was the boss's dungeon of negative emotions. The boss beamed with joy. Then he said, well, he should pay off the debt as soon as possible. He'll go to the tuna boat. Suguru asked in surprise, what? He should wait. MC thought he had become the same kind boss as before. Had the boss really calmed down because he conquered that dungeon? If so, he was even happy. Despite everything that had happened, he had helped him rectify the situation. The boss left and told him that he should live happily. Suguru bowed and wished him the same. He should take care of him. MC walked down the street and everyone passing by looked at him in confusion. She was sitting at the computer. 232. Name, nameless researcher. She greeted everyone. She had new information. It seems the title of Fastest Dungeon Conqueror has been passed on. Suguru was on his phone again. He thought that it was pretty hard for him to enter a dungeon. He probably couldn't find a job because of his face, so this is all he could do. Recently, he decided to make some money with this Dungeon Go. The app allows you to enter a dungeon generated from the user's location and receive rewards for defeating monsters, but there are still many unknown variables. MC said that only a few dungeons are generated in Ichikawa, and even if they are, they disappear within 30 minutes after someone conquers them. Maybe it would be easier for him to enter a dungeon in Tokyo, where there are more people. Shibuya. Suguru stood in the middle of the street. He thought, there are so many dungeons, even though there are quite a few users, he thinks he'll still get something. But still, even on a weekday, there are so many people. Okay, so should he get started? He was transported to the game. His job is ninja. He said he received this job along with the title he took the other day, so it's definitely strong. An information window appeared. A guide, skill effectiveness increases if he uses a weapon appropriate for his job. MC thought the small replica sword he received as a souvenir from the Kyoto Film Village will increase his strength. There was a tag on the sword, a souvenir. Wall run. He can run on walls and ceilings as well as on the ground. Suguru noticed the monster. He used the stealth skill. It is acquired when obtaining the ninja job. He can hide and stun its footsteps. MC attacked the monster. Stealth kill. If, after receiving the ninja job, he attacks an enemy stealthily, the damage will be increased tenfold. He received experience points for defeating the Jealous Uguma F, a reward of 20 yen. Suguru asked in surprise, 20 yen? Killing regular monsters is not at all profitable. MC thought about it. but as a ninja, killing F-rank monsters is easy, and with a kill, he can take them out in one hit. And even if he's unlucky enough to strike first, he can deal with them with 2 or 3 normal attacks. The fighting style of the ninja skill is such that he needs to approach stealthily and take them down from close range. As he thought, this job is ideal for solo play. He needs to defeat the boss quickly and get the reward for conquering the dungeon. Suguru said he now knows where the boss is. A dungeon map appeared in the air in front of him. He used the merciless skill. An information window appeared, a search. If he entered the dungeon as a ninja, he could find out where the boss was without fighting other monsters. F-rank Greedy Sky Ugly Dog defeated, experience gained, F-rank Greedy Dungeon conquered, reward 3162 yen, title obtained, absolute perfection. MC was fighting monsters, then he noticed something. He ran through the corridor and ran outside. He said in surprise, "Can you meet other users here, so he can overtake them, even if they get there first?" It seemed he could even help other users and cooperate with them. Suguru said that it was a strong enemy after all, but he didn't want to get in the way, so he'd probably go ahead. MC was sitting in a cafe drinking coffee. He said that he conquered 10 dungeons in about 5 hours and earned over 50,000. Not a bad business. By the way, what effect does the title he just received have? He looked at his phone. Absolute perfection. It's obtained after clearing 10 dungeons in a row. Upon entering a dungeon, movement speed increases. Suguru said, well, fine. And now he has a map and knows the locations of all the enemies and bosses. He looked at his phone. It said absolute perfection. It's obtained after clearing 10 dungeons in a row. Movement speed increases upon entering a dungeon. Plus, he can get a map of the entire dungeon. Ruthlessness and search. MC was walking down the street and said, right, there are more users and dungeon battles in the evening because school and work are over. He looked at his phone and said, well, he's cleared a lot of F ranks. He should try E rank. He was transported back to the game. He said in surprise, it's much bigger than F rank. Suguru noticed a monster trying to attack him from behind. He shouted that he needed to be careful. Okay, it looks like an easy win. Plus, items are dropping and the reward is big. He got an item, a low rank recovery potion. It restores a certain amount of HP. He received the flash skill. MC was upside down and said, new skill. Well, it looks like it's time for him to move on to the next level. Suddenly, he turned his head and saw other players rushing towards him. They ran past, and Suguru wondered what it was. He saw a monster that noticed him. MC was horrified by how huge it was, and how it was looking at him. The monster attacked Suguru. MC wasn't scared and said that it was strong, but he could handle it. It saw him, so he couldn't use stealth kill. Then he would try the new skill. He used the flash skill. Suguru wondered if the enemy was getting slower or faster. MC dealt with the monster. Flash, he can move with acceleration and defeat the enemy in one blow. Experience gained for defeating the E-rank Jealous Flying Spider. Reward 122 yen. Suguru turned around and saw a girl on the ground who was injured. MC said they shouldn't tell him. What should he do? An item appeared. A low-rank recovery potion. It restores a certain amount of HP. He turned to her and told her to drink it. He lifted her up, and she said, but it's very expensive. Suguru said he didn't care, she just needed to drink it. With the potion, she restored her strength. She told him in surprise, he saved her. And then she thanked him. She said her name was Kyoko Yanai. Apprentice monk Kyoko Yanai. MC introduced himself and said he was glad she was okay. Kyoko awkwardly said they would definitely pay for the potion later. Suguru said she shouldn't worry about it. She countered, but each vial costs tens of thousands of yen. MC was surprised and asked how much. It's okay. She shouldn't worry. He'll survive. She said killing a monster with one blow is very strong. Kyoko asked about the party. Had he seen the sorcerer's apprentice and the swordsman's apprentice? Suguru remembered them running past him and said, she's talking about those 2 guys who just ran past him? Kyoko said disappointedly, they ran off without her. No, they used her as bait. Swordsman's Apprentice 2 is a college student named Kengo. Sorcerer's Apprentice 3 is a freelancer named Kenta. Kyoko said they couldn't even conquer a single dungeon today. It looks like someone beat them to it. The number of monsters killed is so small that it's not worth 1,000 yen. She was having a really bad day. MC thought it was probably his fault. Kyoko approached Suguru and asked if he could go dungeon crawling with her for a while. She was a newbie, having installed the app only a week ago, but she'd definitely pay for the potion and everything. MC thought it would be hard for him if the members of his newly formed squad betrayed him. After all, it was his fault she hadn't earned any money. His mom had told him to be nice to girls. Suguru folded his arms, looked at her, and said they should just create their own squad. Kyoko, surprised, asked, what, a squad? Is he sure? MC replied in the affirmative and asked, how do you create one? She asked. Doesn't he know? Suguru said he only started using the app yesterday. Kyoko, confused, asked, what? He only started playing Dungeon Go yesterday? That's unfair. She can't believe he's so strong even though he's just starting out. The protagonist remarked, well, if she says so, she shouldn't believe him. He doesn't know how to compare strength because he came here alone. The monk's apprentice said thoughtfully, she didn't know much either, but she'd heard that to conquer an E-rank dungeon, it takes about 5 X-rank disciples. The disciples of a merchant, a thief, a swordsman, a martial artist, and a sorcerer, and he did it alone. and she'd never heard of such a profession as ninja. He doesn't even have the word disciple. The protagonist replied that he just accidentally got his profession and title in his first dungeon. The girl exclaimed in utter amazement. A title? She could count the number of C-rank players who have titles on one hand. And this on her first try? Suguru noted that this was indeed the case. He thought that if he mentioned having a lot of them, he'd get even more reproaches. Kyoko, having processed the information, apologized to him for having to downgrade to E rank because of her. The protagonist assured her it was no big deal. The girl continued. They started playing this game because they needed money, and there was nothing they could do about it. If she had cheating skills, she would have done the same. The protagonist, surprised, wondered if this was a dig at him. Kyoko added, and it was Kenta who suggested they downgrade to E rank. He was in a hurry to earn the money he had to pay back today. MC noticed, and in the end, he abandoned one of his friends and ran away. The girl paused for a moment, then said with a smile, but he saved her. The protagonist replied, anyone else would have done the same. He thought the beautiful girl's smile was devastating. Kyoko asked him what she should call him. He introduced himself by his full name and added that she could call him whatever she wanted. The protagonist asked for her name, and she asked him to call her by her given name and looked at him carefully. MC thought she gave him a damn serious look. And wasn't calling her by her given name a bit too familiar? Besides, calling her mistress every time felt awkward. He agreed with her reasoning and promised to call her by her given name. Suguru asked her if she was sure she could continue fighting in the dungeon. The girl replied that she could handle it if she stayed with him. The protagonist remarked that she shouldn't worry. When they descended into the dungeon, they were attacked by a giant spider-like monster. The protagonist shouted at Kyoko to run, but she resisted and asked him to leave her support. MC, rushing towards the enemy, thought with admiration, "This is amazing. His whole body seems to be filled with power." Approaching the monster, he effortlessly struck it, cleaving it in half. The system informed him that he had received experience points for defeating the giant E-class spider. The dungeon of colored greed had been conquered. His reward was 5,157 yen. The protagonist was amazed. Wow, in one hit. He told Kyoko that defeating them without skills like stealth assassination used to take longer. Kyoko happily exclaimed that she was always happy to help. The protagonist asked her if this was all thanks to her. How convenient. She sheepishly remarked, "He's just so strong," he thought, and above all, having someone to talk to really helps. In the dungeon, he couldn't open any apps on his phone except this game. It was great spending time with people during breaks, when there wasn't so much work to do. He was also pleased to know that she wasn't afraid of his face. MC asked the girl if this game was popular in her neighborhood. She told him she hadn't heard anything like it from her friends. Suguru thought he'd learned a lot about his unexpected companion. For example, that she was a high school student at an all-girls school and had a fun time with her friends, but she hadn't said anything about her family. And now, she was once again telling him about what happened in gym class the other day, and he continued to think. Kyoko was categorically against him calling her by her last name, so maybe there was a reason for that, and he shouldn't get involved. They left the dungeon. After some time, the girl looked at the time and said that about half an hour had passed outside. She assumed Kenta had already left. She didn't want to see any of those who had used her as bait again. The protagonist noted that they had probably already run away. What happens to the app if the player dies? Will their account be deleted? Kyoko answered him. She heard something from Kent. Perhaps it was a joke or a blatant lie, but he'd said that you can die in the real world too. The protagonist looked at his phone and said in bewilderment, "Is this a joke?" He thought, a lot about this app remains a mystery. Is it possible that some powerful person is running it and using their power to deal with the problem? Rewards are transferred to a card, so tax returns must be filed. Could all this really be done with government support? The protagonist looked at Kyoko and said that if she really died, the police would come and report it. One day, Kenta would realize she was alive. The girl told him, no big deal. She hadn't told these people her real name, she was just introducing herself. She just doesn't give people she doesn't trust more information than necessary. He thought, this really is callous. So since she revealed her real name and identity, does she really trust him? After a brief silence, the protagonist said he thinks it's time to leave. When they teleported to a certain point, the protagonist noticed with surprise that he hadn't arrived in the same place he had been before. He had joined Kyoko's squad. So had he returned to where they started? The girl looked around and said it was good that Kent and the others weren't here. She bowed politely to MC and thanked him for today. The protagonist replied that it was also nice talking to her. Kyoko shyly asked him to take care of her if they saw each other again. He promised her this and told her to take care of herself. The girl waved and left. Suguru thought about contact information, but since he had no friends, he hesitated to ask. Suddenly, he realized he was really hungry. He figured now was the perfect time. Arriving at the cafe, he chuckled and said, I can't resist the sushi conveyor. The protagonist chose akami salmon, ingawa kohada, and fried fish. After a while, having eaten everything, he patted his stomach and said, this is fantastic. But he still felt like he'd worked up a huge appetite playing Dungeon Go. Maybe it was changing his body? Leaving the sushi conveyor? The protagonist decided it was all nonsense. It's probably just because he was moving around a lot. Suddenly, he heard Kyoko yelling at someone to let her go. The MC saw two guys pestering her, asking her to play with them again. saying they knew a great place. She shouted at them that she was already on her way home. The guys laughed and said she'd been standing there this whole time. Hadn't she been waiting to be called? The protagonist wondered if there were still such bullies left. Well, he'd have to intervene. He called out to the guys who were hitting on Kyoko. At first, they exclaimed, "What do you want?" The protagonist, striding proudly, declared that she was his girlfriend. Do they have a problem? Leaving the cafe, the protagonist didn't put his mask on, and now the guys, seeing him up close, started running away, apologizing along the way for causing him trouble. He looked after them and said, for once, he was even glad he was born with such a face. Kyoko addressed him by name. He greeted her and asked if she was okay. The girl thanked him with tears in her eyes, adding that this was the second time he'd saved her. MC chuckled and said, "For people like them, it's enough to show she's not afraid of them." He didn't think she'd be afraid of them. Kyoko sheepishly told him she was a nuisance in real life too. The protagonist replied that he was worried she might get into a similar situation again. Walk her home? She gasped in surprise. What? Then, embarrassed, she declined his offer. The protagonist persisted, saying he could walk her to the nearest station or to Shibuya if she wanted. She flinched at his offer and glanced at the internet cafe sign. Sagaru thought it was odd. He'd asked her directly if she had nowhere else to go. The girl bashfully looked away and said nothing. The protagonist guessed, so she made money playing this game? He certainly didn't want to pry into someone else's personal life, but this was an abandoned cafe and he would be worried if he left her here. So, he asked her with a smile, wouldn't she like to go to his place? Her expression changed from surprised to suspicious. The protagonist realized the ambiguity of his question and assured her that he didn't mean anything bad. He just lived alone, and guys might start hitting on her again. He was a guy, of course, but not like that. He thought he probably looked creepy right now. Kyoko laughed quietly and told him it was fine. She knew he wasn't like that. She looked at him with a smile and asked him, would he let her in? He hadn't expected such a quick answer, so he reacted ambiguously. When the allies entered his house, the protagonist apologized to her for the cramped space. The girl assured him that it was no big deal. Looking around, she thought, so this is what his place is like. Kyoko noted that he was quite neat. Sagaru answered, perhaps it seemed that way, because he had few things. He added, make her feel at home. The girl sheepishly asked him if she could use the bathroom then. The protagonist replied, no problem. She asked him if she could even run it. The protagonist looked at her in surprise and said, of course. She happily exclaimed how long it had been since she'd taken a bath and ran off to take a bath. The MC noted with bewilderment. How long? She said she'd been at the internet cafe for a whole week. He brought her here because it wasn't safe for a girl to stay in such a shady place, especially a schoolgirl. Sure, he looked shady himself, but this was a temporary measure, not permanent. And even if the police intervened, he didn't have a job, so he wouldn't get into trouble there. At that moment, Kyoko called out to him, and he jumped in surprise. The girl sheepishly told him she didn't have a change of clothes. The protagonist replied that she could borrow his things if she didn't mind. Kyoko thanked him and disappeared behind the bathroom door. After some time, some of the town's residents were enthusiastically posting and reading comments on the Dungeon Masters forum. It all started when an unnamed researcher wrote that this was an information exchange forum for Dungeon Go users. No one would find ordinary people without mystical powers here, so feel free to post information. Useful information can be shared here, such as how to obtain titles and effectively defeat monsters. Also, everyone should refrain from jibes and goading. Researcher number 103 wrote that he dived into an F-rank dungeon in Shibuya today, but wasn't his speed of completion a bit too fast? He was told that he was probably an experienced player who had earned a title. These things happen sometimes. Number 105 replied to number 103, saying he had no choice but to dive into an E-rank dungeon because of this, and it was a terrible experience. Number 106 replied to number 105 that he was an idiot. It's dangerous to enter a high-ranked dungeon before his job is fully maxed out. The dungeon affects it. Rumor has it that there have been cases of low-ranked people entering high-ranked dungeons and killing each other. Kenta, number 124, wrote that he dived into an E-rank dungeon today, and one of his squad members escaped during the fight. She got caught because she's a high school student. Number 129 replied, does anyone know her? Her name is Kyoko. He can't find her because she was removed from his squad and his friends. She's probably dead by now. Number 130 replied to number 129, why does he think she might be dead? Since she ran away, that means she's alive, right? Number 130 wrote that he was the one who sacrificed a schoolgirl to save his own skin, and that's really terrible. Kenta, reading the last comment, cursed and exclaimed in irritation, seriously, this won't bring anything good. Meanwhile, Kyoko was lounging in the bath. Stretching, she said, she hasn't had one for a week. It's so warm. Even in her own home, she had never felt so relaxed. There was no room for her in that house. She remembered her mother asking some man if he could stay the night. She had another bed left over from her ex-husband. Kyoko thought bitterly about her father having died in a car accident when she was little. Since then, her mother had constantly brought strange men into their house. Kyoko tried to avoid their eyes, and if that didn't work, she hid in her room, holding her breath. But one day, a man her mother had brought entered her room and asked her, Her name is Kyoko, right? She goes to school? That's so wonderful. He held out his hands to her and said sarcastically, well, what do they teach children these days? Kyoko ran into him and shouted at him to stay out of her room. The man cursed her filthily, grabbed her arms and shouted at her not to be so arrogant. She was just like her mother. She got scared, threw everything she had at hand at him, and ran away. Then she just sat outside until her mother returned. She didn't want to tell her that the man she brought into their house had harassed her, but she thought that if she did tell, her mother would never bring anyone else. Her mother then yelled at her angrily. So was it because of her that he left? What's so special about her? She was always in her way. They were all interested in her. Why was she taking them away from her? Kyoko couldn't believe it. Her mother was blaming her? That's when she realized her mother didn't need her. They had a fight, and she ran away from home. She took a train to Shibuya. Kyoko didn't remember why she went there. She just wanted to be in a busy place with lots of people. And then, while she was aimlessly strolling through the city, Kenta and his friend Kengo called out to her. Kenta asked her if she was interested in a part-time job. There was money to be made playing a really interesting virtual game. That's how they invited her to Dungeon Do. Obviously, it was a strange offer, but she should have thought about it. Kenta assured her that the game was real. As a runaway, she really liked the job, which didn't require a resume and allowed her to get paid the same day. And most importantly, she didn't care about anything else. So she agreed to their offer, and the guys were delighted. Kenta exclaimed, "This job is much more dangerous than usual, but she'll definitely make money. She should go with them." They met, and Kenta happily remarked, "Great. Looks like she's right for this app." The girl exclaimed in delight. She hadn't even known such a thing existed. So they formed a team with Kenta and the others. They delved into various dungeons and collected rewards. Just as Kenta had told her, she was making a ton of money with this game, several thousand yen a day. If she didn't spend it uncontrollably, it was enough to spend time at an internet cafe. Her partners, however, spent it all as soon as they earned it, constantly celebrating at a restaurant. But these comfortable days didn't last long. After another dive, Kenta exclaimed, "What the hell? F-rank dungeons are being conquered one after another. Is there an advanced player at such a speed?" They couldn't conquer any more F-rank dungeons. So, at Kento's suggestion, they went to the E-rank dungeon. And behold, on their way out, Kenta pushed her away, causing her to fall, and he and Kengo fled the dungeon. She was already thinking she was going to die here. Perhaps this was punishment for getting involved in this dubious game. Looking at the monster approaching, she thought, what was she supposed to do? Apologize to her mother. Just as the spider was about to attack her, the protagonist, his face covered by a mask at the time, appeared. He dispatched the monster in an instant, thus saving her. Kyoko, exhausted, watched his precise, lightning-fast movements. As she plunged back into the bath, Kyoko thought with a smile, he'd been so cool back then, and now she was under the same roof with him, in the same bathtub he was bathing in. What a joy. She'd hoped he didn't have a girlfriend. Then she should have a chance. But how could she approach him? It hadn't worked last time. It had been during one of their dungeon dives, where he'd been desperately fighting monsters, shielding her. Back then, she'd offered to stretch his shoulders, but he'd reacted with irritation. Kyoko ran her hands over her shoulders and thought, maybe he just didn't find her attractive. Maybe because of her imperfect figure? She immediately felt ashamed of her thoughts. And what was she thinking? To cool her ardor, she dove headfirst into the water. But her thoughts wouldn't leave her. He sees her as a girl, right? She just needs to try harder. After a while, Kyoko, wearing his t-shirt, emerged from the bathroom and thanked him for it. The protagonist turned around, about to ask her how the water was. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw how attractive she was, especially in his t-shirt. The girl, drying her hair, told him that the bath had been absolutely wonderful. Let him come too, while it was still warm. The protagonist turned away in embarrassment, cursing, thinking he had nowhere to look. Without looking back at Kyoko, he said he'd just take a quick bath and retreated from the room. She watched him leave, disappointed, and noticed he hadn't even glanced at her. It seemed he didn't care for her. Suguru, locked in the bathroom, caught his breath and wondered what he should do. He'd never had a girlfriend in his life, so the temptation was very strong. He should finish quickly and go to bed. The protagonist looked at the bathtub and felt a sense of insecurity. Having made up his mind, he climbed into the warm water, listened to himself, and decided that everything seemed fine, although the sensations were a little unclear. At the same time, Tatsuya, the leader of the semi-criminal gang, kicked Kenta, who was crumpled on the floor, and exclaimed, "He must be joking." Kenta howled in pain and covered his face with his hands. The lead bandit continued. Today he was supposed to collect his 100,000 yen. His comrades, standing behind their leader, looked at their victims with smirks. Kenta, burying his head in the floor, replied, "The older players have taken all the best dungeons. There will definitely be money tomorrow." Kengo looked at the bandits with fear and remained silent. Tatsuya angrily asked Kenta, was he even thinking of playing with them? Fine. He'd wait until tomorrow, but only with 1 million in interest. Kenta, unable to believe his ears, exclaimed in amazement. 1 million? The leader told him that if he didn't, his sister would pay him. Kenta, desperately, clutched his head in his hands and wondered what he should do. He doesn't have 1 million, and Kyoko, who was his backup, is gone too. He looked askance at the smug Tatsuya, realizing that they couldn't compete with the power of advanced players. After that, they went outside and asked loudly in a dissatisfied tone, what should they do now? It's all his fault. He should shut up. After all, it was he who spent the money. Anyway, if they don't get 1 million, they will both be killed. He should tell grandma that he got into an accident and make her pay for everything. This is some kind of joke. How can he involve grandma? A man approached them and said that it looks like they are in some kind of trouble. He apologizes for interrupting them. His name is Hajime Kaneda. He is a private detective. If they have any problems, they can contact him. They looked at him in surprise and Kengo asked loudly, "Is he seriously a private detective?" He put his hands on their shoulders and said that, among other things, he deals with problems such as unreasonable debts. It seems he can help them. He released the threads from his fingers that he attached to them, and this really surprised them. He grinned, adjusted his glasses, and asked what they thought about the contract. They both stood in place and realized that they couldn't move. He looked at them with a smirk and said that although, considering that Tatsuya had cornered them, they didn't have much of a choice. He wanted them to do something. He showed a photo of Kyoko and said that they should bring this girl to his office. She owed him some compensation. Just don't let the police catch them, okay? He didn't care about them at all, but he didn't want the police to get interested in him. He called them trash and said that now they should leave here. Later, people wrote on the forum, could he ask a question? Yesterday he got a new party member and he still can't decide which job to choose. It seems like he should give him a support or recovery job, since he's not yet combat ready enough. He wanted to wish him luck, but information about dungeons isn't that easy to get. Maybe someone can help. He just looked and was able to find the description of the task in the last 50 threads, so he'll post it here. He doesn't know any other professions, so he recommends choosing one of these. Is he a developer? He always provides them with information, which is usually something they're reluctant to share. He'll take advantage of the moment and ask his question. Is there any point in a derivative profession? If a warrior apprentice constantly uses swords, then upon reaching rank X, he'll become a swordsman apprentice in addition to a warrior. It's a super low compatibility profession for warriors, so there's no reason for it to exist, right? Derived professions are generally stronger than regular ones. Although a swordsman apprentice is considered much weaker than a warrior, he's about 1.5 times stronger than a warrior apprentice, and high-ranking swordsmen are also stronger than warriors. However, if they're in a high-ranking party while only being apprentices, they'll be a complete burden, so they say it should be avoided. However, he had heard of professions that were derivatives of others. For example, the destroyer monk, which was derived from the monk. Monks specialize in interpersonal relationships, so other professions cannot compete with them. Another particularly problematic profession is the slave trader, a derivative of the merchant. He can freely manipulate lower-ranked seekers, and this sounded dangerous. The next morning, Saguru woke up because he smelled delicious food. He left the room, called his mother, and asked what they had for breakfast today. He noticed Kyoko, who was sitting at the table, and she also looked at him. She laughed and politely asked, "Did she wake him up?" He was very embarrassed by this and thought that he had made a mistake. He hadn't really woken up yet and was simply lost in his memories. He asked, "She understands that he simply expressed himself incorrectly, right?" He hadn't had any breakfast prepared for him since his student years, so he forgot himself and mentally returned to that time. She laughed and said that she understood everything. He took a plate of rice and said that it was amazing that a middle school student could cook breakfast. She calmly said that her parents hadn't cooked anything. She was asking him to help himself. He agreed and thanked her, after which he tried what she had cooked and loudly said that it was very tasty. The perfectly salted salmon went well with hot rice. He hadn't had such a delicious breakfast in a long time. The miso soup was also very tasty. It was a great start to the day. She, looking very happy, said that she was glad that her food made him so happy. He, looking satisfied, said that he wished he could have breakfast like this every day. She plucked up her courage and asked, if that was the case, could she stay in his house for a little while longer? He carelessly agreed and said that she could stay as long as she wanted. She couldn't believe it and asked if he was really sure about that. He agreed with a smile and said that he knew how hard it could be. She was even more happy about this and thought that she could stay under the same roof with him. The protagonist called her and asked, however, what about school? Kyoko thought about it and said that Kenta and the others could be at school. She would like to postpone this moment for another week. He understood her and asked then if she wanted to go to the dungeon today. She abruptly got up from the table and happily asked, is he sure she can go too? He abruptly turned away from her and thought with embarrassment that he definitely saw it. He asked if maybe they should buy some clothes before going to the dungeon. After that, they both came to the store, and he said with surprise that he had never been to such a clothing store. She said that she was also buying clothes for the first time in Tokyo. She put on a dress and asked what he thought about it. He looked at it and said that it suited her. She thought that she tried on a lot of things, but he liked this one more. He seems to like neat and tidy styles, so now she will try with this. He approached the store employee, took out a card for payment, and said that they would buy this dress. She was very surprised, came up to him and said that actually she wanted to pay herself. He turned to her and said that it was no problem for him. The saleswoman waved her hand to get his attention. He leaned over and she quietly said something in his ear. He turned around and said that he asked to let him pay in gratitude for the fact that she showed him such a sweet side of herself. She was very embarrassed by this, agreed, thanked him, and he turned around and wondered why she suggested this to him. After that, They went outside and she said that they bought so much. He calmly said that it was no problem because they earned enough. Besides, if she stayed with him for a long time, she would need all this. Kyoko smiled and said that if that was the case, she was asking to work off today's expenses in the dungeon. Sometime later, they arrived in Kabukicho and found the entrance to the dungeon. They saw monsters inside, and he said in a serious voice that they should go. She agreed, after which they began to fight, and the system notified that he had received experience points for defeating an E-rank ugly rabbit. The ninja job level had increased. The mage apprentice job had reached the maximum rank of X, and he had received the mage job. MC looked at her and said that it seemed she had already gotten used to fighting. She stood nearby and said that she was simply learning from him. He looked to the side and noticed a system window that said the ninja apprentice job had been received. He stared at it intently. Kyoko noticed it and asked if something was wrong. He said in a slightly confused tone that nothing was wrong. He just needed to sort things out a bit. He looked at it and wondered what it was and how it was different from his current job. Maybe it was some kind of special behavior style? He needed to check what was there. He saw the list of ninja moves and was a little surprised to think that there were a lot of bizarre moves there. The second job, the mage's apprentice, had reached the maximum rank. Is that the reason he got the new version of ninja? He completely forgot about the second job. He should look it up. The second job is a function of the title he received in the first dungeon. He chose the mage's apprentice as his second job. Then maybe elemental magic is from the mage, and everything else is from the ninja. Sounds interesting. From now on, he will make the ninja apprentice his second job. Kyoko called out to him in a worried tone and said that his shoulder was injured. Suguru looked at his wound and said that it was indeed so. It looked like someone had caught him after all. However, it didn't hurt, so everything was fine. She pointed her hands at him and said that it didn't matter. He should bend down so she could heal him. She started using the healing and restoration spell, and he said loudly in surprise that the wound was healing. He moved his shoulder and said that it was great. It was completely healed. Did she also learn the restoration technique? She said with a happy expression that after so many battles, her level had increased, so she learned a new technique. The system notified that the monk apprentice's job level had been increased and the recovery skill had been learned. She was a level 5 monk apprentice. He remembered the past and asked, "Isn't that great?" When they first met, she was about level 2. She agreed and said that she seemed to be leveling up quite quickly. They say it usually takes a month to level up from 2 to 5. The protagonist happily said that it was great. Maybe it was thanks to fighting E-rank monsters. Kyoko happily said that it was all thanks to him. She wasn't up to monsters of that rank. He took off his mask and said that then she should let him show off one of his new skills. However, she shouldn't get too close. He raised his hand and used the fire style, Dragon's Roar. He released a powerful stream of fire over a very large area in front of him. She was very surprised by this and loudly said that this was amazing firepower. This is simply unbelievable. How did he do that, and what is this? He bit his finger and said that he ran out of mana points. He started to leave and said that he needed to adjust the power a little more before using it. She was worried about this and asked if he was okay. He said that everything was fine, but he suggested they rest for a while. She loudly agreed and said that they shouldn't rush. After that, they sat down against the wall and she asked if everything was okay. He could lie down if he wanted. MC politely refused and said that he shouldn't relax too much because there were monsters roaming around. She turned away and thought that she would definitely have a chance to pet him. He looked at her and asked, by the way, if her mana points were okay. After all, she used recovery magic. She turned to him and said that her magic didn't consume that much mana. However, with his new skill that he just showed, he made her worry. He was a little worried about this and thought that indeed, he hadn't thought about it. He asked for forgiveness and said that he would do everything to make amends. Because of this, Kyoko's eyes lit up and she asked, did he say anything? He became nervous and said everything in his power. She asked with a sly smile, what should she choose? She noticed his reaction, laughed, and said that she was just joking. He looked at her and wondered, what was she thinking? He asked, maybe they should continue? She agreed, after which they went further and met a large monster in the corridor. He took off his mask and again used the fire element, Dragon's Roar. He released a fairly strong stream of fire, which immediately killed it. The system notified that he received experience points for defeating the great ugly rabbit of colored greed, rank E. He put the mask back, turned around, and said that he was getting better and better at controlling his magic. She was happy for him, and they saw a system notification that the E-rank dungeon had been conquered. The reward was 5,157 yen. She received the item, the Awakening Pendant. It appeared in her hands and she asked what it was. Suguru looked at her and asked if she had received the item. She said that it seemed so. It was written that it increases magical power. He said that it seemed like they had received an item that suited her. She was very surprised by this and asked if it shouldn't belong to him. He calmly said that, however, it was in her hands. She said that, however, she had done almost nothing. This was his well-deserved reward. He thought about it. He had an idea, and she said that she could consider it his gift. He hoped that she would accept it, because he would be sad if he gave it away. She thought about it for a while, then thanked him with a joyful smile and said that it was very kind of him. She took off her hat, put her hair back, and said that then she wanted to put it on now. He walked up to her and wondered how to fasten it. For a loner like him, putting a necklace on someone was too much of a task. He managed it, and Kyoko looked at her new necklace with a happy look. He said that they had defeated everyone. It was time to go back. She agreed, after which they teleported to the street in casual clothes. The protagonist looked at her and asked, how about lunch? Would she like to go to a cafe around the corner? She was confused by this question, took out a small bag and said that in fact here, she made lunch. Would he like to eat together? After that, they sat down on a bench, and she took food out of the bag. He was very surprised when he saw these dishes, and she said that she used everything she found in the refrigerator. He was about to start eating, wished him bon appétit, and said that he didn't know there was anything left in the refrigerator. He tried it, and with a very satisfied expression on his face, said that the omelette was tender and slightly sweet. How he missed those sausage octopuses. She looked at him with joy, and thought that he was so happy. Her mother had never been so happy when she cooked for her. He finished eating, thanked her, and said that it was very tasty. Kyoko said that she was glad that he liked it. Could she cook something again? MC asked if it would be too much trouble for her. She had already made breakfast. She said that it was okay. She loved to cook. Maybe he had any wishes for lunch or a favorite food. He thought about it and said curry, hamburgers, and omelette with rice. She was surprised, turned away, tried her best to hold back her laughter, and he asked loudly why she was laughing. Most guys, even in adulthood, like that. She laughed a little, apologized, and said that it was too cute. Next time she will cook hamburgers. At that time, Hajime came into Tatsuya's office and said he was grateful for his work. He asked with a serious expression, did he receive the money from this yanai? He adjusted his glasses, agreed, and said he had arranged for her daughter Kyoko to pay off the debt. So they were now actively searching.